If I watch a movie at a theater, fully immersed for 2 hours, how does that differ from watching it in 10-second clips on TikTok? Am I a better moviegoer? Have I somehow understood the movie at a more intimate level? Or, in simply insinuating that the theater experience is better, have I upheld some arbitrary standard based on class and resources? How does that same argument work for politics? Should I feel more informed if I read The Times or AP and my conversation partner shares the same information they garnered from Reels? Surely, right? These are trusted news sources, traditional media institutions that have lasted for generations. But they're also traditional media institutions that uphold a two-party status quo through horse race coverage and polarize audiences on a daily basis. How does that work? Okay, so what about social media? It offers instantaneous connection around the world, a decentralized space for innovation and creativity. Those are both great things. But it also offers a decentralized space for extremism and violence, owned by mega corporations who are collecting our attention and selling it to the highest bidder, all while destroying our shared sense of reality. Neither of these options feel fair. Both resemble dystopia. As new technologies emerge, the relationship between media and politics is constantly put into question, and at the same time, predictions of the future shift rapidly between utopian or dystopian, all based on the most important problems of the day. In my opinion, today, media and politics faces a crisis of polarization and personalization. Polarization dominates political narratives, with politicians utilizing inflammatory language and calling the other evil as the gap between the left and the right widens. Alongside that, social media algorithms are creating personal realities, separating us from each other using political beliefs and incentivizing enclave deliberation. And new technologies like AI are poised to exacerbate these problems, leaving us few options for recourse. But we do have options. We just have to understand our problems. So, what are polarization and personalization? How do they work? How do they affect media and politics? And, most importantly, what can be done to fix them? Let's see. Jürgen Habermas coined the term the public sphere to describe a private space for collective action, where citizens could openly discuss their government, society, or other political or philosophical qualms. In modernity, this essential space has declined due to a number of factors, but most pertinent to polarization is, strangely, objectivity. According to Habermas, modernity assumed that humans could be an unbiased mirror, viewing each other from on high without the necessity for opinions or communication. This phenomena has been viewed by many traditional media scholars, where objectivity is the norm. In racialized media, Carlos Alama Pastrana and William Hoynes have illustrated how objectivity preserves whiteness and discourages diverse perspectives, something that can embolden polarization. And Wesley Lowry, a writer for Columbia Journalism Review, echoes this sentiment, writing that traditional media practices performative neutrality, where organizations are prioritizing the perception of their virtue. In his view, this is most evident in the use of euphemisms like racially charged when describing blatant racism, which distorts the truth of violent actions. Objectivity acts as a shield for fringe ideologies, permitting them a certain amount of credibility in the vain hope of illustrating both sides of any story. In a perfectly functional public sphere, fringe perspectives would lose out to more logical or thoughtful ideas. Polarization becomes a factor when these perspectives are treated as equal, objective parties. In that scenario, general facts and knowledge become topics of debate, removing any basis for conversation. What's most worrisome about polarization today is just how normal it feels. Traditional media plays a large role in normalizing fringe perspectives by condoning polarized persons, as we can see with The Times. On October 12th of this year, Eli Slaslow wrote an article titled, "She Despised Charlie Kirk, He Resolved to Make People Like Her Pay." Its short byline claims that two people, a paramedic and a former mayor, simply got caught up in two sides of a digital civil war. As the article explains, after Charlie Kirk's assassination, the former mayor felt a religious calling to snuff out all those who were celebrating his death. One of those people was the paramedic, who had made posts on social media with comments saying good riddance in regards to Kirk's death. As the former mayor called on his followers to find people and essentially ruin their lives, the paramedic's post was spread across right-wing subsects of the internet. And before long, her place of work was leaked, as well as pictures of herself, her house, her car, and even her mother's house. she was forced out of her town. The article presents both sides of this story as equal, both in validity and fault, which is absolutely insane. The former mayor goaded his followers into committing actual crimes that put her life into significant danger, all because she made a post. This isn't some civil war. These are disgusting acts by thousands of people with a morally wrought sense of righteousness. This is polarization incarnate. And worse, it all happened with the help of social media. The Social Science Research Council published Social Media and Democracy in September of 2020, a culmination of research efforts into the state of the field and prospects for reform. Although it covers many topics from regulation to personal use, most pertinent to this investigation are chapters 2 and 3. Chapter 2, titled Misinformation, Disinformation, and Online Propaganda, interrogates the role of social media platforms in the dissemination of mis- and disinformation. In their findings, fake news dominates the feeds of extreme partisans, and its general presence relies on the novelty of the information being presented. Further, they find that fake news uniquely garnered exaggerated interest, allowing articles to circulate on platforms for much longer than legacy sources. This phenomenon leads to the dissemination of fringe views to a wider audience, which increases the probability of polarizing folks with more moderate views. And, by remaining on platforms alongside legacy news organizations, fake news is awarded an unearned credibility, which may further entrench polarized beliefs. But, according to Chapter 3, titled Social Media, Echo Chambers, and Political Polarization, this might not be the case. The authors claim that platforms like Facebook and Twitter expose people to diverse opinions and disagreement through novel information. And alongside that, the authors cite a paper that found that even if the level of political polarization has increased for all age cohorts in the United States, the change has been smallest in magnitude among the youngest set of people, those most likely to be active on social media. This result suggests that digital technologies are likely to play a limited role in explaining why polarization is on the rise. This finding has since been corroborated by other academics, including Joseph Phillips, who in his 2022 study, Effective Polarization, concludes that while political polarization has increased over time, it's due more to age-related increases of in-party warmth and the strengthening of partisanship with age. With this information in mind, it cannot be said that new technologies like social media increase polarization, but rather they work as a tool to achieve polarization, just like legacy media formats. What social media can achieve is efficient dissemination of information, which if used in malice can negatively affect a broad population. Polarization exists as a phenomenon without social media, but the technology can bestow objectivity to any piece of news, or embolden users to share others' private information, just like the former mayor and his followers. So, although social media platforms may not be designed to polarize, when they don't do anything to moderate their content or punish users who abuse the system, they might as well be. Polarization works through the fear of the other, through a lack of diversity in information and deeply held beliefs. So when new technologies do not actively fight the status quo of supposed objectivity, they support it. Polarization remains unchallenged. Stuart Rand, media philosopher, connoisseur, and early adopter of the internet, bastioned technology as personal power. When the internet looked like this, he viewed it as an unregulated creative machine driven by unique individuals seeking connection across the world. Anything could be achieved by anyone without, as he puts it, a big economic event, making the idea of a purely digital economy fantastically decentralized. Stephen Johnson, writer of Future Perfect, finds this insight foundational to an ideology he's named pure progressive. In his view, the internet ought to be an innovative space of collaboration where individuals on interconnected networks hold immense power to shape the world around them together. Both Brand and Johnson share an underlying premise that the internet exists to facilitate connection and collaboration, but what if it did the opposite? What if, rather than fostering innovation, awareness, and freedom, the internet allowed for vast companies to profit off of our attention, monopolize the market, and tune out the rest of the world? While many see a utopian future in the pursuit of a digital world, in practice, the constant desire to personalize one's experience has left us isolated, adrift in a sea of information far removed from reality. Social media and emerging AI technologies often feel at war with themselves, advertising social connection while entrapping people in algorithms and fantasies. Chris Hayes, news commentator and writer of The Siren's Call, has put extensive work into understanding this concept, what he calls the attention economy. In his view, large tech companies like Google and Meta are actively monetizing our attention, overwhelming us with information to capture what little free time we have. This is best illustrated with this slot machine analogy, describing that social media moves like a slot machine, scrolling vertically, endlessly, with continuous interruption, never having to do much to hold our attention. His attention economy necessitates that companies opt into this model to remain competitive, leaving the consumer without any other options. And social media algorithms actively fight to make each experience unique, a process that can tighten the grip on consumers. Each turn at the slot machine of Instagram and TikTok rewires its programming, giving you just enough to keep you hooked, but never letting you win. The end goal of this hunt for attention is a curated reality, attuned to political philosophies and cultural biases, entrenching beliefs while capturing more and more of our time. Hay's attention economy can be expanded far beyond social media, as observed by other media philosophers, including Douglas Rushkoff, who in his book Present Shock lofts heavy criticism against an instantaneously connected world. In an interview with NPR, he explores the titular concept, defining it as the human response to living in a world that is always on real time and simultaneous. The constant access that we have to each other is unprecedented, and it produces the phenomena of timelessness, where we struggle to orient ourselves and are constantly overwhelmed by the present. While these two concepts work in tandem with Hay's attention economy, Rushkoff introduces another that expands upon it, called Digiphrenia. While we use different media platforms, be it social media, email, gaming, or school accounts, we adopt different incarnations of ourselves, all of which exist on ever-changing digital platforms. While this may not seem all that abnormal, since we might have a different personality among friends than the one we would have among coworkers, these personalities exist at the same time, simultaneously, and we have constant access to them, which blurs the lines and warps reality itself. As our lives move more and more into the digital space, personalized profiles and platforms are cracking our shared sense of reality, and AI is poised to accelerate this process. This emerging technology has bolstered the stock market, with tech companies accounting for 1/3 of the total capital, and it has just as many investors as it does critics. While its economic future is yet to be determined, the social cost of language learning models like ChatGPT are becoming worryingly apparent. Multiple scientific journals, as well as news sites like Psychology Today, have begun to study and report on a phenomenon named AI psychosis, a pattern of individuals who've become fixated on AI systems, attributing sentience, divine knowledge, romantic feelings, or surveillance capabilities to AI. This can be illustrated with this chart from a preprint paper by Hamilton Morin, which demonstrates how individual interactions, however mundane, can compound into extreme delusions or psychotic breaks. It starts simply with initial engagement, things like talking to ChatGPT for a homework question or stuff like that, which can prove that the AI response reinforces salience, and then that can move into thematic entrenchment, repeated interactions that amplify delusional themes. So the user might be talking to ChatGPT more about very personal topics, but nothing's too bad has happened yet. That can move into cognitive drift, where the user has an increased conviction to these delusional themes, which can move into the reality testing deteriorating, which is when the AI fails to challenge these delusions and in fact feeds into the delusions. All of these can cycle into each other, having these repeated interactions that reinforce these delusions, which finally ends in behavioral manifestation, which includes things like psychiatric crisis, relationship disruption, and is the definition of AI psychosis. The digital age embodies personalization just as personalization embodies the digital age. Without access to our data, to our likes and dislikes, the tech companies that control the few platforms we use could not personalize them. And without first speaking to a chatbot, it could not feed our delusions and break us from reality. Personalization has become the norm in our tech-based society as we find ourselves consumed by convenience and overwhelmed by the information that we see. In the attention economy, personalized realities represent the ideal market, because why would anybody want to leave a reality attuned to their every desire? Polarization and personalization present two massive problems for media and politics. They can entrench a person's beliefs, capture our time and attention, and destroy our shared sense of reality. It has never been easier to be both connected to the world around us and wholly separate from reality, all from the comfort of our couches. So, what can be done? Although there are many avenues to the solutions to these problems, I think a simple distinction between the individual and the system will suffice. For the individual, Hayes proposes a decision-making process that emphasizes commitment and implores the reader to return to analog technologies like physical newspaper. These solutions best address personalization because that only works when control is relinquished to an app or an algorithm. By ignoring convenience for commitment, the user takes back control, both of the information that they see and of their sense of reality. But this committed decision must reject the prevalence of social media and AI, of our instantaneously connected world, in order to be a tangible solution. Still, these are great options for personalization. For polarization, media literacy can reveal the warped system of objectivity, as well as provide people with the skills to decode priming and framing within all media. But these require resources which might not be available. As cliche as it may seem, one of the best options an individual has in order to fight polarization is empathy, regardless of politics. Hatred and fear are easy emotions to have, but in order to have political moderation or facilitate an honest dialogue, we have to treat each other as human. Many people fall into extremism simply because they're scared and alone, but a genuine connection, regardless of the format, can truly make a difference. Systemic changes are a lot less tangible than their individual counterparts, but they provide governments with a ton of great options to use. One such avenue would be regulation, which would force the hand of media companies to finally moderate both their content and their users for extremism. But as Chapter 9 of Social Media and Democracy cites, the pro-market revolution of the 1980s caused animosity towards regulation in the US and fostered the belief that largely unregulated media markets would best serve public interest. This hostile environment has rendered regulation unfeasible, but it's opened the door towards another avenue, antitrust. Although media scholars like Robert W. McChesney view antitrust as a patchwork solution to an inherently broken system, I would argue otherwise. I agree that the system is broken, but I think that patchwork could easily dampen polarization and personalization. For the former, stronger antitrust statutes could have broken up Meta or stopped Paramount from taking vast swaths of the industry. This would allow for more diverse media options and give users the chance to choose what content they want to see. For the latter, this would be great for a committed decision-making process, and a shakeup of tech companies could upend the status quo, potentially threatening the attention economy. For both, antitrust makes markets and culture more open to different ideas, like regulation, which would be more feasible if corporate interests weren't tied to just a few companies. Antitrust is a tangible, systemic change that can actually affect polarization and personalization, and we should try to get to it as soon as possible. Polarization and personalization do not exist independent of the markets, of the broader political landscape, or of the individual. They are products of a broken system, one with many issues and fewer solutions, but we do still have options. The system, as well as its individual concepts, needs a desire to change and a willingness to embrace different, sometimes unconventional ideas. So I ask you, are you willing? Thank you for watching.